Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you a recipe where I'm dipping into my stash of frozen sour cherries and I'm making a very special snack time cake. It's a yeasted sour cherry coffee cake, a perfect snack cake. I just think of like a coffee cake as something that's baked in one layer that has like a crumble or streusel topping and usually some kind of like warm spice in it. The recipe has three main components. It has the yeasted coffee cake base, and then it has the fruit filling, and then it has like a streusel crumble topping. And all of them are really straightforward and easy to put together. For the cake base, I have some all-purpose flour, milk, granulated sugar, a few eggs. I'm doing 2 whole eggs plus a yolk, salt, yeast of course, and 1 stick of Kerrygold unsalted butter. For the filling, I have 1 pound of sour cherries. It's about 3 cups. You could do this would be great with peaches or like other stone fruit. It'd be really good with plums. I pitted and froze these sour cherries back in July. So that's what I'm using today. I have a lemon because I'm gonna do a little zest and juice, vanilla extract, 1/3 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons cornstarch, and then an extra tablespoon of butter. Then for the streusel topping, more flour, some light brown sugar, another stick of Kerrygold butter, and a little salt and a little bit of ground cinnamon. I'm gonna use my stand mixer to put together the yeasted base. It's just a lot easier to do it in a stand mixer. I have the paddle attachment. Then you're gonna need a 9x9 square baking dish, which I have behind me, and a little saucepan there's a part where we pre-cook the juices with the cherries so that we don't get like a watery mess in our coffee cake. Before I get into the recipe, I want to thank our friends at Kerrygold for sponsoring this episode. Kerrygold, as you know, is the maker of incredible quality butter and cheese. All of their products are made from milk that come from cows grazing on grass and family-owned farms in Ireland. And for me, the butter is a cut above. It's amazing for baking. It's so creamy and smooth. It gets fluffy in cakes. It like rolls out into laminated pastry and makes it so flaky and buttery. But it's also the butter that I keep at home for eating, for having on toast, cooking my eggs. It's my all-purpose butter, and I just feel great about using it because it's such high quality, high fat content, so yellow and beautiful. Today, I'm incorporating it into my yeasted coffee cake. A whole stick is going into the base. It makes that sort of like bready yeasted coffee cake really buttery and tender. And it's also going into my streusel topping and a little bit of my filling. In the streusel topping, it bakes up like crispy and crunchy, and it's just so versatile. I love using it at home. If you want to learn more about the butter and cheese products from Kerrygold, go to the link in the description below. And now let's get back to the recipe. So for the first step, I'm actually going to macerate my cherries. So I pulled these out of the freezer. They are in the process of thawing. So I'm gonna just mix them with a little bit of sugar and lemon juice and set them aside. So this is 1/3 cup of sugar. I want the cherries to have time to thaw, and the sugar is gonna pull out a lot of the juices. So that's what macerating is. I'm gonna add just a little squirt of vanilla extract, a little bit of lemon zest. So probably about a teaspoon of lemon zest. And then I'm gonna cut this and do a little bit of the juice. I'm gonna just toss all this together. Because this is a yeasted recipe, I do recommend setting this up the night before. Like if you're making it for breakfast or brunch or something, start the night before with the cake base. So I'm gonna put this behind me and just let it kind of hang out while I put together the coffee cake base. Basically, my gooey butter cake, a dessert person, is a yeasted coffee cake. And this is similar to that recipe with a few modifications. The dough for this recipe is really somewhere between a batter and a dough. It really kind of like threads this needle because you want something that has enough structure to like rise like bread with the yeast. And so it's like you don't want to use cake flour, which is like super low protein, because like you need a certain amount of gluten structure to sort of trap all the air that's generated. So it still turns out nice and tender because of the butter content, but it's a pretty thick consistency. So I'm going to start the way you would normally start with a cake, which is with my butter and sugar. Save the butter wrapper. This is great for greasing the pan. This is 1/2 cup of sugar. It's not a particularly sweet cake, which is nice because it's a nice canvas for the sour cherries. Now I'm gonna mix together my dry ingredients. I have 2.5 cups flour, a teaspoon of diamond crystal kosher salt, and a teaspoon of instant yeast. You don't have to proof it, so I'm just getting this mixed. Now I'm gonna turn on my mixer and start to beat this I want to get it pretty light and fluffy. I also have some vanilla extract. I'm going to add this to my milk, which is my liquid ingredient, so about 1.5 teaspoons. I'm just going to scrape down the sides. So I want to beat this until it's pale and fluffy. I'm on like medium power. I'm going to add my eggs. The recipe calls for 2 whole plus 1 yolk. The quantity of egg kind of overwhelms the amount of butter. So it's going to get pretty liquid, which is fine. It's going to all come together when we start to add the dry ingredients. And now I'm going to do a yolk. The extra yolk is just there to enrich everything. What ends up happening is you kind of have a cake that's like a little bit like brioche. Like it has, you know, that kind of, it's not sweet, but it has that kind of extra richness. Now I'm going to add my dry ingredients. I'm going to add half the dry, then do the liquid, then the remaining dry. So I'm going to turn down the speed. If you wanted to add some like warm spice or other flavor in here, you could do more lemon zest, you could do orange zest, a little cinnamon or cardamom, whatever you like with the cherry flavor or with whatever fruit you're using. So in goes the rest of that flour mixture. Once everything is well combined, stop mixing. It's not like bread dough where you want to sit there and like work it. So the idea about the whole kind of point of using instant yeast is that, which is different from fast acting, by the way. Don't use fast acting. You can mix it right in with the dry ingredients, and it sort of like hydrates with the moisture in the dough. So it might take a little bit longer to proof as compared to active dry yeast, and you can switch them out 1 to 1. It's just easier to work with because you don't have to proof it. I didn't have to like warm the milk or anything. So here I have the kind of cake base. I'm just mixing it by hand and scraping the bottom and sides because you'll get like little pockets of unincorporated butter sugar. So I'm just making sure it's evenly mixed. You can see it has this kind of really thick consistency and like a little bit of elasticity. So that's what we want. Here is the same batter spread into my pan. And so this is why it's nice to set this up the night before. So you can spread it into the pan, put it right into the fridge. And what happens is in the fridge, everything just kind of like hangs out, the flour hydrates, you end up developing better flavor and better texture by letting it like hang out and have this kind of cold fermentation in the fridge overnight. And then the next day you pull it out just like I did today and top it. If you don't have a 9x9, you could put this into like a 9-inch cake pan. That'd be great too. Here I have my sour cherries. You can see that they have started to collapse a little bit just from thawing and like shrivel up a little bit. That's actually a good thing because it means that they're giving off their juices, and you can see they're really swimming in liquid. Sour cherries are incredibly juicy. There's like such a high water content. I can't just like put this on the coffee cake because it's going to introduce so much liquid into the recipe. The cake is not going to properly bake, and it's going to have like an off texture. So without actually cooking the fruit, I'm going to concentrate the juices. So I'm going to strain this mixture into my little saucepan here. And I'm going to start cooking these juices. I want to reduce them by about half until they get kind of syrupy because like I have that sugar in there that's dissolved. So I'm going to bring this up to like a simmer, kind of a medium boil, I guess. And I'm going to leave the cherries in the strainer and allow them to continue to drain into this bowl just while this is reducing, and then I can add it in. This has been out of the fridge for the last 2 hours or so. There's really not much proofing that happens while this is in the fridge. And when I say proofing, I mean that like the yeast is metabolizing the flour and producing gas. So this has puffed up a little bit. It still has a little bit more time to proof, but we are going to, it can proof with the topping on it. I'm just kind of whisk this occasionally. This is going to cook down relatively quickly. And now I'm going to add my cornstarch, but I don't want to just add cornstarch directly into the liquid because it very easily forms lumps and they're like really hard to get out. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to this to dissolve it. Don't pay attention to my huge sink full of a ton of dishes. So I just added about maybe like 2 teaspoons of water. So this is called a slurry. Could I have put this in a larger bowl? Yes. Now I want to bring this back to a boil. That's going to activate the cornstarch. It's going to thicken the mixture. I should add any remaining liquid. So this is done. I'm going to now, off the heat, whisk in that 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm ready to mix the fruit with the juices again. The whole point of taking the juices and reducing them separately is that I'm not cooking the fruit. Like I want the fruit to maintain its integrity and its flavor and the texture and everything. So I'm gonna let this cool for a few minutes. I'm just gonna kind of stir it. It's going to cool quickly because the cherries are actually still pretty cold from having been frozen. So I'm just gonna let this cool for a little bit. Streusel, very easy, very quick. I have my all-purpose flour in here. I usually make streusel with brown sugar or demerara sugar. You could use white sugar if that's what you have, but this is some light brown. It's about a half a cup. Then I'm adding a little bit of cinnamon and a pinch of salt. And I just wanna work all of this together. And then I'm gonna add my butter. I have a stick of Kerrygold here, so 4 ounces. And this is room temp. Streusel is really easy and fun. This is a good thing to do with kids because it's like you can't really mess it up. So you just wanna work the flour mixture into the butter. And I am gonna switch to my hands, but in the beginning, I'm just using this like a spoon or a fork or a spatula because like as soon as you touch the butter, then your hands get coated in it. And then it becomes a little messier than it needs to be. So the idea here is just to work it in fully so that there's no like loose dry flour. Everything is kind of held together and you have little crumbs. All right, so here I'm gonna switch to my fingertips. I just want no big butter pieces because those will just kind of melt. Basically no like loose, dry floury areas. So once you have the butter fully mixed in, you can leave it in this very fine crumb texture, or you could actually squeeze it and then kind of break it up into larger pieces. So it's up to you about what kind of texture you like. I kind of like a mix, some kind of slightly bigger clumps and some more like fine crumbs really. So now we're ready to assemble everything. I have my oven preheating to 350. So I'm gonna start by spooning my cherry mixture over the surface of the cake. Now I'm going to add my streusel topping. So this is gonna go in. I wanna bake it until the cake is puffed, it's fully baked in the center, and the streusel is gonna be browned. Let's pull it out. It's smelling done. All right, we're good. There's like little pockets of bubbling cherry juices. It's really, really hot. So we just wanna let it cool and we'll come back and taste it. And it looks great. It rose really nicely. It looks so good. I love the kind of like gradation from crumble into cherry topping into cake. The topping has that like really pleasing crumb texture. And I love when you bite down, you get like a little pop of cherry. So I'm gonna taste. I realized I was just describing how it tasted before I actually even tried it. I love that you get, it's like a yeasty smell that almost makes it seem donut-like, you know, like yeasted donut. It's really not that sweet. It's just sweet enough. I think if you really wanted to, I don't know, like gild the lily a little bit, you could do like a little icing on top. I love sour cherry so much. Actually like a super elegant kind of like snacking cake anytime, but like great for breakfast or brunch. And like the yeasted thing is so cool and delicious. And it is very cake-like, but it has like a slight brioche quality. Like a slight kind of silky breadiness to it. I'm gonna sit here and finish this slice, maybe with a little milk. This might be my new favorite coffee cake to make. So I hope you give this a try. You can do it with any stone fruit, but you could also just do like a little cinnamon sugar on top of the yeasted coffee cake base. It's super buttery, but also really light, and I think it just makes it like a little extra special and sort of unexpected. And I wanna thank our friends Kerrygold for sponsoring this episode. Kerrygold, as you know, if you've been watching, is just my butter of choice at home for all things baking and also just eating. So I wanna thank them, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're good. You can cut. You want to try some?
Cut.